Hey family, it's me again. So my mom, she turned 90 this month, June 5th, and I wanted to, my hope was to at least get it around her birthday, and then it was like, I hope I get it Gemini season, and now it's like, let's try to get this done before the end of June. So here I am. I did want to, I don't know how far this video is going to reach. I don't know if it's going to be a few people or a few thousand, but I wanted to reach out to the young lady who I think Dane Calloway did. He did a live, but when I watched the replay, it seemed like people were calling in, like people were actually able to call in and ask questions. And this particular young lady who she called in about her grandmother. She said she was from Chicago. Her grandmother came up from Arkansas. And at one point she was like, my grandmother's an Aries. And her grandmother's the same age as my mom. She mentioned her grandmother was 89, and back in October of 21, my mom was still 89. I don't know if she mentioned her age, but she sounded like she might have been about my age. So I just kept seeing all these, or hearing all these parallels. Like her grandma was an Aries, and I'm an Aries. She's a Gemini, my mom's a Gemini. And, you know, there's just a lot of similarities. So, you know, if by a miracle she finds this video, you could like reach out, because just similar mindsets on ancestry and elders and in the same city, because a lot of people are still reiterating, parroting, and believing like the narrative. So that's the preface. So my mom's side of the family, I'm gonna do this, if you know, my father's side took like 20 to 25 minutes. My mom's side is gonna take 30 to 45, because you know, I found more people. And because she's 90 and lucid, I had more oral history, I had her memory. So there's just more people on her side to talk about. But I'm gonna start with her father's side, because that's gonna be shorter. And baby's he's doing all right, but he's gonna get fussy. And I'm gonna have to do this with one arm again. So yeah, so let's start. So she was born, here he goes. She was born in St. Louis. But she considers herself, oh, she considers herself St. Louis because she was born there. But yeah, that's where she was born. But, and I think I mentioned this in a previous video when I was talking about elders being born on one side of the river and then being brought back on the other side. So by the time she was born, her great-grandparents had come up, you know, because it was still up. They had come up from Metropolis, Illinois. And when I get to that side, because that's like her mom's side, so that would be another video. But they had come up from Metropolis, Illinois to East St. Louis. Well, most of them ended up in East St. Louis, but her great-grandparents, my great-great-grandfather, who I named my son after, so his third great-grandfather, they moved to St. Louis. They bought a house. There's a census where he is listed as a homeowner. I forget which one, 1930. He might have been dead by 1940, so it might have been a 1920 or 1930 census. He was a homeowner. He was literate. But yeah, they, you know, I think they had like 8 or 9 children. And I think it was an aunt of hers that agreed to take in, sorry about the angles, I'm trying to push this stroller with one arm. They had agreed to, like, you know, take in my grandmother, you know, for her lying in period. So that's why she was born on the St. Louis side. And I guess once and I don't know how long my grandmother's lying in period was. But once it was over, they went back to East St. Louis to live. So I consider myself a 5th generation Illinoisan, even though my mother was born in St. Louis. You know, she was raised in East St. Louis, and when she got older, her father, my grandfather, he had worked as a houseman in Highland Park, Illinois. So, you know, I think like the way my mom described it, he would be there for like, you know, during the week, and maybe every other weekend, either every weekend or every other weekend. He had his apartment in Bronzeville. So when my grandfather was here, and I don't know what year he like came up to, you know, to work in Highland Park, but, you know, he lived in Bronzeville. My mother had several addresses in Bronzeville, I think at least one in Englewood. These are Chicago area neighborhoods, if you're not familiar. But Bronzeville was like the historic, if you're not familiar, Bronzeville was the historically black neighborhood. And it was called that because in the beginning, you know, when the Great Migration started, it was the only place in Chicago where black people were allowed to live, and they just called it Bronze because of the color of their skin. So, and my mother, so here's where, I'm talking about my mom's mom, but you know, I'm talking about her birth story. So, I went too far. This should be like her mom's side, but still, I'm still talking about her dad. So because my grandmother, she had a nervous breakdown when my mom was 7, so she ended up being raised by her aunt. So basically, my grandmother, she had an older brother who was like a firstborn boy, but he moved up to Milwaukee. The second child, oldest girl, and then my grandmother was the middle sister of the 3 girls, and then her baby sister, who we call Auntie Lodi. Auntie Lodi was like my grandmother figure because Aunt Mabel, the oldest, she died soon after my great-grandfather died in like 58, I think. It was the year my sister was born. My mom was raised by aunts. When she was in East St. Louis, it was her aunts. And then when she was in Chicago, it was her father. Let's just go. I'm sorry this is so unorganized. I didn't really like mentally prepare, and I knew it would be long. And I always hope I can sit down, but I can't. So my mother's father was born in Sugar Lock, Mississippi. I'll spell it correctly in the description and the tags, but people pronounce it Sugar Lock. He was one of 5 surviving children. My great-grandmother had 11, birthed 11, 5 survived, and my grandfather was one of the 5. I don't know what year, because I haven't found enough census records, but they moved from Sugar Lock to East St. Louis. What I did find in the census records, they were farm workers in Sugar Lock, and when they were in East St. Louis, they worked for various railroads. Some of the records have, the occupation, railroad worker, and then some of those records actually name which railroads they worked for. So that's their migration story. My grandfather's parents, so I mentioned his mother, his father, my great-grandfather's a dead end, or a block. I haven't been able, my mother doesn't remember him ever talking about his parents. She does remember Uncle Tommy. I found something on Uncle Tommy, but not far back enough to list his parents, so it is a lead that I can look more into. My great-grandmother, she's the one my mom suspects to be, and keep in mind my mother subscribes to the out of Africa theory. I haven't really laid a lot of the indigenous stuff on her. But given that she believes or just remembers, because I think she was maybe 12 when her paternal grandmother passed, that, they called her Mama Susie. So her paternal grandmother, she remembers her looking like she might have been mixed, quote unquote mixed. She says she appeared, she was, I guess, brownish, but like so are we. But, her words were, she looks like she might have been lighter when she was younger. Because a lot of us, we darken with age, but she said her hair was on the curlier side, I guess curlier than the rest of us. I have my father's hair. I'm a 4C, my dad was a 4C. My mom's more like a 4A. And I guess, from her description, Mama Susie's hair might have been type 3. But, she never talked about it. This is like another thing to really look into. That neither of them, or the both of them, not talk about who they were or what they might have been mixed with, because, and did they end up leaving? Were they part of the Great Migration because of the threats? If you talk about your culture, your tradition, your ethnicity, were their lives threatened? But she describes Mama Susie as being quiet anyway, like quiet by nature. She'd read her Bible, and she was just really quiet. My great-grandfather, on the other hand, Papa Louis, temper. The man had a temper, and I think maybe that's where I got mine. Part of it might be the Aries blood, and some of it might be Papa Louis's blood. I don't even know if he was an Aries. But, very different types of people. He was the more outspoken one. She was the quiet one. But, my mom always says, by the time you have the questions, they're gone. They've transitioned. But she's like, as children, she's born in 1932, so she's a child in the 30s, teenager in the 40s. She remembers World War II. She remembers ration books during the war. She said that she and another girl, during like the bomb raid drills, they were the two who had to go down the street to make sure everybody's lights were off. So this is that time. This is where how she came up. She's like, we didn't ask questions. Even if we were wondering and had the question, they didn't dare ask because, it just wasn't a child's place to ask if they had the question. But she's like, they didn't know to ask. They didn't know what to ask. And if they wanted to ask, you don't dare do it. And by the time you're an adult and you know it's okay to ask, they're gone. They're not around to ask. So she thinks Mama Susie might have been mixed with something. She doesn't know how many generations previous, was it her mother or her grandmother? She does know because her maiden name was Nicholson. And I don't know how long she knew or if it was from this family reunion, but she found, she knows Mama Susie's parents. So we know her parents. And I did find a census record on my great-great-grandmother. Her maiden name was Caroline Nicholson. And I think her mother's name was Caroline Nicholson. And the two of them, I forget which year. I want to say 1830, but I would have to look at my records to be sure. But I know both Caroline Nicholsons were classified as mulatto in their respective census records. So there's that. They may have also at one point been on the Alabama side of the border. But I'm not sure. Yeah, because Sugar Lock is very close to the Alabama border. So yeah, but then that Caroline Nicholson, the third great-grandmother, she's the roadblock on that side. Mama Susie's father, he's a roadblock. His name was Thomas Sanders, James Thomas, Thomas James Sanders. So he's the roadblock because I haven't found his parents. So yeah, I've got a third great-grandmother, a great-great-grandfather, and a great-grandfather. Those are the 3 roadblocks on my mom's side. So yeah, just talking about my mom's father's side, that's going to be just under 20 minutes. Her mother's side is going to be longer. The matrilineal side, not as much, even though that is the most important. But yeah, there's a grandfather's line that goes way back. My baby asleep. I could have been sitting down this whole time. And I'm done. What? So yeah, so that's what I've got. And that's where I am on my mother's father's side of the family. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there. And I'm gonna see if I can find a place to sit. And maybe I can do my mom's mother's side of the family. Well, my baby, sorry about these angles. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I think I might do the matrilineal side while my baby enjoys his nap outside in the sunshine. Take care, everybody. Hey family, it's me again. I'm back sitting down. So yeah, let's I think I'm gonna go matrilineal first. I'll kind of see where I am before I get into my mother's. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through the grandfathers to let you kind of clarify which grandfather. But yeah, so mom was born in St. Louis. Brought back across the river to East St. Louis. Talked about her father just now. My grandmother. So she's the third child, second girl of my great-grandparents. And hi. And yeah, so I'm like, I guess, yeah, I'll just get into it because it's, you know, once I kind of broke down the pattern, it did get emotional, like kind of realizing everything. So my maternal grandmother had a nervous breakdown when my mother was 7. So even though my grandmother was the last grandparent that I lost, I think I was 25 when I buried my grandmother. I was 13, hadn't yet turned 14. I was still 13 when my father's father died. So yeah, she's the longest living grandmother, but because of the cognitive loss, you know, she was physically there, but not, like, you know, people talk about their grandparents, and it's like, yeah, my grandmother, and she took me here and took me there and bought me this, and I spent the night at her house. I never had that. I never had that narrative. So my mother didn't really, she had her mother, but she didn't. So my aunts, my mother's older and younger sister, because they had never gotten married, and so they took on the responsibility of raising my mother and her 2 younger sisters. Now, for whatever reason, because there were 2 younger sisters, well, maybe because of the age difference, because my mother was like, about 6 or 7 years older than my Auntie Marcy, who was, 7 years, because my Auntie Marcy was born February of 39. My mom was born June 5th of 32. So I think my grandmother birthed Auntie Marcy before the nervous breakdown, and I know Aunt Karen would have been after. Don't ask me how that happened, but that's how it happened. So yeah, my mom had her mother, but didn't. My mother's maternal grandmother, she was a young mom, but you know, a lot of parents became parents young. My great grandfather was a young dad. I think she was 14 or 15 when she had Uncle Lawrence. And then every 2 or 3 years, you know, Aunt Mabel, my grandmother, Auntie Lodi. When I found the death record, you know, because I think, you know, my mom would always, you know, say things, you know, she would talk about her family, our family, my family. She would always talk about it. And until I started like writing it down, I think I printed out, like when I first started. I'm gonna do a video about how I started. But you know, I grew up hearing all these names, you know, Mama Susie, Papa Lewis, Grandpa Willie, Grandma, like there were all these names, but I never put together who was who until I printed out like, you know, fill in your own family tree, and I started writing down who gave birth to who was whose parent, how is this grandmother and this grandmother and this grandmother like my great grandmothers. So if you haven't done that, do that, just so you can know, you know, kind of like when I talked about my Aunt Clara and nobody said she was Papa Austin's sister. That would have been some really important stuff to know, because if I had known, I could have asked her, what was my great grandfather like? Do you have pictures of him? But nobody said anything. She was just Aunt Clara. Well, how is she my aunt? Like, nobody said anything. So if you've got all these names and people and auntie and auntie and auntie and auntie, well, how are they your auntie? Because like sometimes your friend's best friend, your parents' best friends are your auntie, and they're like, well, that's not a blood auntie. You know, they might treat you better than your blood, but you know, you still need to know your blood. So yeah, so I would always hear about Grandma Maddie. It's like, okay. And then it's like, what happens? Like, well, she died. Well, what happened when she died? Then that was when your grandmother and your aunts were raised. So, all right, I'm sorry. So my great grandmother, my mom's maternal grandmother, she died. She was 23. And my grandmother wasn't yet 4. I think it was like in August. And my grandmother's birthday is like September. So she hadn't yet turned 4. And my auntie Lodi was like 14 months. And then like the older 2 siblings, they were still young too. So they were like these 4 itty bitty kids. And my great grandfather, he was young. He was like 27. He was a young dad. So with the 2 sets of, I guess, grandparents available, like my great grandfather's parents were the younger. My great grandmother's parents were older, and they had a lot more kids. My great grandfather was an only child. I don't know how rare that was, because his mom, Grandma Minnie, she was like 15 when she had him. Like, where's all her other kids? And yeah, and so it was her and my great-great-grandfather, Grandpa Willie, who raised them. Because Grandpa Ira, he was an adult, but an only child. Grandma Maddie's parents were older. And I think their kids had kids, and it would have been a lot more for them than the grandparents who did take them in. So, yeah. So I didn't know that talking about it would like bring stuff up to the surface. But yeah, so then, but yeah, we're sticking with the matrilineal line here. So yeah, my grandma Maddie, who's my great grandmother, her parents, her mom, Eva Toombs. I'm naming names just in case like people see this and they're like, hey, I got a Toombs in my family. I got a Cox in my family. I got hella Greens in my family. Yeah. I kind of hope that people can like hear common names and common locations and maybe make connections, but also know it's gonna be some riffraff. We're gonna be like, yeah, I know all them people. Like, no, you don't, because I've never seen you at a family reunion. My mom's maternal grandmother's mother. Toombs was her maiden name. She has a lot of names. So Eva's one. It's a lot of names. And so which makes searching for her, it can be difficult, because if I don't put in enough names, I might not find her. But then if I put in too many, it's gonna be like, oh, anything could happen. But I've seen Mary Toombs and I've seen Eva Toombs, but then I've seen some other versions of both of those names. But yeah, she was born after the Civil War. She was a bit younger than my great-great-grandfather. They got married in 1884 in Tennessee, Western Tennessee. But they both came out of Central Tennessee, like not in Nashville, but when I talk to people in the Nashville area, they know where Carpentersville is. I need to look at my record to be sure, but I want to say maybe Murfreesboro, but I'm not sure if my great-great-grandfather was Murfreesboro. But my great-great-grandmother, my matrilineal line grandmother, yeah, she, I did find her in like an 1870 census. She was a child. She was living with people who weren't her parents. So it's like, yeah, I found her, but I didn't find her parents. But it was, yeah, a town north of Nashville. And, yeah, so she's a roadblock because I couldn't find her parents. My great-great-grandfather, so my mother didn't even know her Grandpa Stahl's parents' names, and I found Grandpa Stahl's parents. And I remember my mom telling me he was so dark he must have been from Africa. But this was before I knew about, because he was born in 1857. So she assumes that he was enslaved because it was Tennessee in 1857. Yeah, I haven't found a record though before 1870, so I can't confirm or deny. But what I did find for him in 1870, and he's in a lot. I'm very grateful that Grandpa Stahl's, he's got a lot of census records, and they have a lot of information, including him in 1870. I think he was like 13. He's the oldest. He's the firstborn son. Found his mom, Eliza Cox. And I went to school. I went to grade school and high school with a Cox. And now I want to know if we cousins. Because it's like, oh, there's a Cox in my family. And his father, Abner. So Abner is a pretty significant name because his father was Abner. Don't know why he's not the Abner. He had a younger brother who was Abner. And he named one of his sons Abner, I guess after his father and his younger brother, to keep the name in the family. But yeah, I was like, Ma, I found Isaac Taylor Stahl's parents. And she was floored, like, yeah. So my third great grandmother, Eliza Cox, so from what I found, she's the oldest. So I can go back more generations on Grandpa Willie's side. But Eliza Cox is, so far, she's the oldest birth date. She was born in 1829 in Tennessee. So if there's a slave ship involved, it's gonna have to be like a parent of hers. And this is where I can co-sign with what Dane Calloway puts out there. If she was born in Central Tennessee in 1829 and there's a slave ship narrative, that means it would have had to be a parent or grandparent of hers. That ship would have had to have gotten here before 1808, and somewhere between the coast and Central Tennessee, people didn't move like that. The farther back I go, at one point I thought my family was all between the Mississippi River and the Tennessee River and the Ohio River and the northern half of Mississippi, because what I had found at one point, they were all in this very specific area between rivers. The farther back I go, the farther east I end up. But it takes a generation or two to go a little bit east. So yeah, I got 2 third great grandparents on my mother's side in central Tennessee. So yeah. So those 2 third great grandparents, they're roadblocks because it's an 1870 census. And then my great great grandmother, my matrilineal line great great grandmother, she's a roadblock. This is already 17 minutes, so I'll do her father's line in a separate video. Well, not her father, but my great grandmother's father's line, because that's where it branches off. So yeah, so I'll end this one here. I did say it's gonna take 30 to 45 minutes to get through them all, but yeah. So with that, I'll end it. Bub's still sleeping, so I think I'm gonna finish this out. Take care, everybody. Hey family. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna split branches on this one. I don't know if it's gonna be 3 videos or 4. I'm glad I get to wear this shirt though, because this is the shirt I wanted to wear when talking about my mom, even though she likes lighter shades of blue. This is my shade of blue. So yeah, so we went from my mom, her parents, my mother's parents. Okay, so we talked about Grandma Maddie, so this is where it starts to branch off. My great-grandfather, my mother's maternal grandfather, Grandpa Ira. He was born in Metropolis, Illinois. Yeah, I don't want to just say Metropolis. Yeah, y'all gonna be thinking Superman. I think they do have a Superman monument down there, but it ain't the same. He was born in Metropolis, Illinois. The only child. I find that a miracle, just with the time and with the age of my great great grandmother. He's an only child, but he had 4 kids, and out of those 4 kids, only my uncle and my grandmother had kids. Yeah, that's a miracle. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like kind of taking that in. But yeah, so yeah, Grandma Minnie. Okay, so here we go, because here's some roadblocks coming. Grandma Minnie was born in Kentucky. I know as a child, she ended up in Metropolis, but she came out of Paducah or near Paducah. Yeah, I don't, I've got 2 binders of records, and I think I dedicated 1 binder just to my mother's maternal grandfather's branch, because there's just so many records, which I'm grateful for. I'm so grateful for it. But then you get the roadblocks, and yeah. So yeah, Grandpa Iris. And again, I have to name names so I can keep it together in my head while I'm doing this for y'all, or for me. I mean, it's probably more for me than it is for like anybody. So his mom, born in Kentucky, if not in Paducah, close to Paducah. And I found her parents' marriage record. Unfortunately, that marriage record did not list their parents, or maybe it was her marriage record I found and it had the parents listed. So yeah, Molly Griffin and a Balti Tyler, in or near Paducah, Kentucky. So those 2, Yeah, those two third great grandparents are the roadblock. Yeah. So then Grandpa Willie, Grandpa Ira's father, this is where I can go back the farthest. His father, Thomas Buchanan, is a roadblock. And that's like, that's like the predominant maiden name in my family, and I can't find Thomas Buchanan's parents. The only lead that I really have is in Metropolis. Their records office, they've been really good to me, because I would just like send requests and they would send information back. So big ups to Metropolis Records Office. I didn't attempt to ask for anything in 2020. One, I was pregnant. All my creative energy was keeping a baby alive and inside me. But they probably would have been short-staffed anyway. And I think like the first time I called them, they're like, yeah, there's an election going on and we just don't have the staff to do it. So it's small anyway, and I can't imagine what they were going through 2020 and maybe even 2021. But they've been good to me, and they've sent me a lot of records, and they found me my Auntie Lodi's birth certificate, even when they couldn't find the birth records of like the other people that I asked for, because they were like, well, we noticed the names were the same, so we just decided to send it to you. Wow. So they're good. They were really good. And I was been able to find a lot of information, but I think my last, it may be my last, because, it was like 2 to 3 generations in Metropolis, Illinois, before they moved up to East St. Louis. But then after they had like all moved there from Tennessee and Kentucky. And I think that's probably why and how my great-great-grandparents maybe got together, because so while my mother's side came out of Tennessee, my mother, well, not my mother, yeah, it's a lot of names. I'm so sorry. It's a lot of generations, and I don't want to like skip, but my mother's maternal grandmother's mother, they came out of Tennessee. My mother's paternal grandfather's parents came out of Kentucky. So Grandma Minnie came out of like Paducah-ish. Grandpa Willie was also born in Metropolis. So he's the first generation born in Metropolis, Illinois. His parents, I couldn't find his dad. So I don't know where his father was born. And I think so this is why I started talking about Metropolis Records Office. The only lead I can think of is requesting a 50-year span of death records, because he was obviously alive when Grandpa Willie was conceived, but Grandpa Willie's mother died a widow, so he died before she did. And it's like a 50-year span, and I don't want to feel bad, but it's like I've got no other leads. I couldn't find a single census record on them. So my third great grandfather, Thomas Buchanan, is a roadblock. Grandma Minnie's parents, my third great grandparents, they're roadblocks. Grandpa Willie's mother, this is how far back I can go. So yeah, I can get this done in this video, because that's what roadblocks will do for you. They shorten the videos. So Grandpa Willie's mother, she was a Mary Ellen Woods. Oh crap. No, she was born in Kentucky. I'm sorry. Yeah, because ever since I've been looking, I knew Grandpa Willie was the first generation born in Metropolis. She was born in Kentucky. Central Kentucky, Caldwell County, Hopewell, if I'm remembering my paperwork correctly. That's where she was born and raised until she was maybe 13, or she was about 14 when she had Grandpa Willie. And yeah, so I think they got together because he came out of Kentucky. Well, yeah, Grandpa Willie came out of Kentucky. Grandma Minnie came out of Kentucky. So they were probably like two Kentucky, well, he didn't come out of Kentucky, but his parents did. So they probably just got to talking. She's from Kentucky. His parents are from Kentucky. They're both in Metropolis. So let's make a baby. That's the hunch I got. That's the message I'm getting from the ancestors. They had Kentucky in common, and they were really young. They probably, they did what teenagers still do. So yeah. So Grandpa Willie's mom, Mary Ellen Woods, Hopewell in Caldwell County, Kentucky. Yeah, so I guess she would have, if Grandpa Willie was born in 1871, she was about 14, so she would have been born pre-Civil War. And at first, at first I found her parents earlier in my research. I was like, ooh, this looks good, but I don't want to put too much faith in it because, what if it's somebody with the same name and you start going down the rabbit hole and it's not even your people. So I just sort of like put it in the back of my mind, set it off to the side, and took a break from research. And then when I restarted my research, I saw that I was looking for another set of grandparents' marriage records in Metropolis, and I found what I was looking for, but then it was like July of whatever year this was, and there was like a July date and one set of people. I was looking for like a great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents marriage record and like verified it. And then I kind of looked, because they sent me like like a copy of the ledger. And I kind of saw these familiar names, and it turned out that, so like the great-great-grandparents who couldn't raise my grandmother and aunt because they already had a lot of kids, one of those, their children, because they had a lot of kids, it looked like sisters got married like 3 or 4 days apart. And they married the baby brother of my third great grandmother. Like, oh. And then I'm looking at the names. I'm like, oh, I got to go find that census record. And that was how I verified the census record. And it was like, I wasn't looking. I was looking for somebody else. And it just so happened these sisters got married several days apart. And their names were like 3 or 4 names apart on the ledger. And the names matched up with the census. Like, oh, those are my 4th great grandparents. So Mary Ellen Woods was born to Lucinda Hobson. That's her maiden name. I don't remember how I found it, but I found Lucinda Hobson and John Woods. And John Woods is so freaking common. I found so many white men named John Woods born in Kentucky at the same time. It's such a common name. So it's really hard. And my John Woods might have come out of Virginia, but it's like, I don't know, I need to verify. Like, I don't want to just jump on the first thing that says, this is it, because there's just so many people. And like Ancestry.com, they'll be sending you hints about white people. Like, these ain't my people. My people ain't white. Now, if they're like mulatto, colored, okay, but don't send me records about white people, and like I already put their racial classification in the yeah. So I'm sorry, but yeah, they're gonna, you know, if you're black, they're gonna send you records about white people who are like younger than living grandparents. Like, no. So I'm sorry about that tangent, but yeah. So I verified my fourth great grandparents through a marriage record. You know, it's like you're gonna find some miracles. You go deep, you're gonna find some. Like when my mother still had my Papa Austin's obituary from '73 sitting in her basement in 2018. And then you look up, you request a marriage record for one set of great grandparents, and you verify your fourth great grandparents because sisters got married several days apart in July of 1920, whatever. Yeah, so when I found that census, it was an 1870 census record. So before my grandpa Willie was born. I don't know if it was Metropolis yet or if it was Kentucky, but I know, like, you know, the birthplace was Kentucky. That was listed on there. And that 1870 record had the whole family. And I think that's why when I first found it, I was like, nah. But when I verified the names, I'm like, okay, this is it. The whole family was classified as mulatto. Fourth great grandfather John Woods, fourth great grandmother Lucinda Hobson. My third great grandmother Mary Ellen Woods was a firstborn. There were two other aunts, however many degrees of great aunts. So at the time it was her and two younger sisters. And I guess sometime after that, a few more children had been born, including a younger brother. And it was him who got married to one of the however many degrees of aunts that Grandpa Stalls and I guess they called her Grandma Stalls. Yeah, my mother always talks about Grandpa Stalls, and then she talks about Eva Toombs, but they were married. But yeah, he married one of those sisters, a sister of, you know, my great or great great grandmother. Now, when my mom talked about Grandpa Willie, physically, she said he was really light, like really light. I think his eyes were like grayish. She said that he would have been able to pass if he didn't have like a broad nose. And I think his hair, I don't want to say, you know, she still talks about kinky hair, nappy hair. It sounded like he had type 4 hair. But yeah, again, I think, yeah, my mom, she's got the 4A hair, and I'm not sure anyone on her side is really more tightly coiled than 4A. So yeah, he may have had some type 4 hair, and he had a broad nose, but because like I remember asking, what was he lighter than Mama Susie? She's like, yeah, he was much lighter than Mama Susie. Okay, so I knew that before I found his parents. And then I see this 1870 record of his grandparents, and they're all listed as mulatto. And I know that can mean a lot of things in 1870. But that's how they were classified. And the two of them, so I've got a set of fourth great grandparents who were a roadblock. So, yeah. So that's, yeah, I think that's everybody. And again, like my father's side, I'm just gonna keep going back till I find an ethnicity, till I find some land. And, and if there's a ship, give me the name of the ship, give me the ship ledger, give me the manifest, give me the itinerary, the cargo listing, give me the stuff if there's a ship. But so far I ain't found any ships, even on my Igbo side, on my daddy's side. But yeah, I'm taking a break. I ran out of money. So yeah, when I talk about how I got started, I'm gonna talk about why I stopped, because I ran out of money. But yeah, I'm out of money, so I'm not looking. And I'm writing a book on a completely different thing. I'm writing a book about my health and birth story. I gotta do that. But yeah, I need to find my ethnicities, my ancestral home. And if there's land, if the land was freely given, okay, that's fine, but show me. And if the land was snatched, you're gonna show me that too, so I can get it back. But yeah, that's everybody. I was able to get my mother's great-grandfather's people in my mother's grandfather's people in this one video. Baby sleeping. And yeah, so that's where I am. I still have more video ideas. It just won't be about my ancestry till I found a breakthrough. But yeah, like I was mentioning before, the farther back I go, the farther east they are. And yeah, when I saw the one record, prospective record of my fourth great-grandfather, and it's mentioned in Virginia. So like, this is, what I mean when you have to look at when did states come into the Union. If he's from Virginia, he may not necessarily be from Baltimore. He could be from present day West Virginia, but back then it was still Virginia. I forgot what year. I see another stroller and the dad's shirt is off. I'm so sorry I got distracted. I'm sorry, Robert. I got distracted by the shirtless dad with the stroller. But yeah, I don't know. I can't just say what year West Virginia separated from Virginia, but that's the kind of stuff that I look for. Because if a record says Virginia, but it predates when they separated, then it could be valid, because geographically it's not very far from central Kentucky. So it is feasible. Now, if it was like Richmond, Baltimore, then I'm gonna have to ask, but people didn't migrate like that. I'm gonna do I've got some ideas, and one of them will be migration patterns. Like, if you're from the coast, yeah, it's more possible and feasible to have, a slave ship from Africa in your narrative. But if you're back to 1829 and you've got fourth great grandparents or even third great grandparents who were born before the war, he's up and I'm moving. Hey, Bubba. Yeah, if you got people born in the central interior part of this geographical landmass, talk to me. You can't tell me nothing about no ship. And the things were banned in 1808. Yeah, I'm getting ahead. I'm about to make another video. But yeah, that's where I wanted to end. Just let you know, my mom's side of the family, because I told you she's got more people, so I need more time. And yeah, so that's where I am. So I'll let y'all know. I will update you when I can, but there's going to be a few more other related videos between now and then. So thanks for listening and watching. And if you got questions, feel free to question in the comment. I ain't got time for trolls. I told y'all that in the car video. But yeah, thanks everybody. Take care. Hey family. So real quick follow-up, because there is something I forgot. I realized when I was talking about my fourth great grandparents being classified as mulatto in the 1870 census, fourth and third great grandparents. So I forgot to mention my maternal grandmother and her baby sister, my Auntie Lodi. I'd found, this was very early in my research, before I even went to Ancestry.com. I think I was Google searching census records just to see who I could find. And it may have been in 1920, because yeah, my grandmother was born in 1911 and Auntie Lodi was born 1914. So this might have been a 1920 census record. And they were classified as mulatto. And I was like, what was wrong with that census taker? Like, what was he thinking? So I brought it to my mom's attention. I was like, yeah, look at this. They said that Grandma Hildred and Auntie Lodi are mulatto. And we laughed because what we know to be mulatto phenotype, quote unquote, I'm not trying to like slur or anything like that, but that was the classification of the day. And until rather recently, that's kind of how we refer to people who were typically, oh Lord, who were typically, had one black parent and one white parent. That's what we called them. So because neither of them look the prototype, yeah, trying to keep the baby quiet. Yeah, he's not sleeping. So yeah, they didn't look the type. Now, I've seen, it was a painting of Auntie Lodi when she was younger, and she was painted to be a lighter complexion woman. But I don't think she had ever really looked, quote unquote, mulatto. And my grandmother definitely didn't. So because we knew what they looked like, we kind of laughed at that classification because it didn't come close to their physical description. But then when Dane Calloway did that video of the history of how indigenous copper-colored Niji were classified in census records, then it made sense. But now there's like this bigger question, because they're the only ones post 1900 with that classification. I think I had mentioned great and third great grandmothers were given a mulatto classification, but that was in the 1800s. And then my third and fourth great grandparents had that classification in the 1870 census. So my grandmother and my great aunt both had that classification, and this was like 1920. Now when they died, they were Negro. Well, they died in the 2000s. They were African American. But it's not the first time I've heard that. Yeah, I don't want you on YouTube, baby. I'm sorry. It's not the first that I've heard where people are born with one classification and then they die with another. They were both African American when they died, but they were mulatto when they were like 8 and 5 years old. So yeah, I wanted to put that out there because I know it means more now than it did, because that was like the baby days of my research, and those are like some of the first researches that I did. So I wanted to put that out there, just in case, just so you know what I know, and just in case like you're doing your research and you find something similar. If you know that this person isn't, the modern definition of mulatto, but you find that classification, it means some stuff. So we gonna find it. We gonna get this. But yeah, so I'm gonna end it there because there's another train coming. So take care, everybody.